You know, one of the things you all know about me, but I'm going to tell you again, and that is that Valerie and Company, which is my leadership development firm, allows me to do this podcast, which is a blessing and a searches, what would the word be? Searches my heart and fulfills my heart in being able to interview incredible people. I've always said that in Valerie and Company, we focus on people skills. And that's really what it is, how people look, act, walk, talk, and are authentically from the inside out. Thus, the name of the show comes from one of my 8 books, Do It Right. Doing It Right is the show. So let me tell you about today's show. Early on, just about 2 months ago, I had Mark Whitacre on the show. Mark Whitacre was the whistleblower that brought down in the 90s a huge billion-dollar company called ADM, Archer Daniels Midland. From Decatur, Illinois, it was a corrupt company with the people at the top corrupt. He was an executive in that company, and the founders kind of brought him up. And in his naivete, he became a part of what the FBI had been looking at for years. They wired him for 3 years because he had no choice, and he knew he was in trouble. Today, I have his wife on the show to talk about what that journey was like, and it's all captured in this book called Against All Odds. And you can see I have tabbed the heck out of it. So stay tuned for my conversation with Ginger Whitacre. And I always want to thank my sponsor. This time it is Taylor Bags. Stephanie Taylor is an incredible designer of beautiful leather handbags from little to bigger, made in Spain. Check it out, taylorbags.com.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
Ginger Whitacre. Thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for having me.
Well, you know, this book outlines the journey that you went through with Mark those many years ago in the 1990s. And the thing that you and I talked about pre-interview before this show was, gosh, Ginger, what a woman of faith you are. Against all odds, you stayed with your husband through all of his journey and even going to jail. So I just want to start with, there you were, Ginger, those years ago, you were an elementary teacher, and you watched your husband go to work for this company in Decatur, Illinois called ADM. First of all, what skills and talents and expertise did Mark have that brought you to that company?
Well, Mark has a PhD from Cornell in biochemistry, so he is like the perfect mix. He's the scientist, but also an amazing businessman. So ADM saw in him this perfect combination, someone that could speak to the technology and the science of everything they were doing, but also was an astute businessman. And that's what drew them to Mark. And he was doing some work with them with his previous company, and they offered him a position to come there to Decatur.
And Ginger, a lot of people don't know what that company's products and what it was about. So kind of fill us in on that part.
At the time, and I'm not sure the exact number, but I think they're the 52nd largest company in the United States. They're a food additive company. So pretty much everything that you have at the grocery store, other than fresh vegetables, organic things like that, has something from ADM, something simple as orange juice, Kellogg's cereal, soups, Tyson chicken, any of that has some food additive from ADM. So it's really hard to go into the store and not have something that ADM has touched, that one of their ingredients is in. So it's a huge company, and this was not just here in the United States, this is worldwide. They're the largest food additive producers.
So you had to be very proud when a job offer came for this fabulous, supposedly, company. But give us some insight into what you found out really was going on inside the walls of that company back in the 90s.
Well, we had just come previously from a German company that was very strict and just a wonderful, very ethical company. And so we came to this. Mark was 32 when he came to ADM. So it was an amazing position at such a young age. He was number 4 in the company, and they just took him in and showed him all the bells and whistles. He was given the opportunity to have a corporate jet, like I think in the first week or two, that was just assigned to the top executives, that was at his beck and call. Great salary, great stock options, all bonuses, all these kinds of things. So it was looked up from the outside like a wonderful opportunity, just absolutely wonderful. But as time went on, a couple of years, things just started to change. I just noticed changes in Mark. He was not only working during the day, but he was working in the evenings from like 8 at night until the middle of the night. And so in November, I asked him, I said, something's going on, not thinking it had really anything to do with work. I wasn't sure, even possibly was he having an affair? I didn't know. It was just something had changed. It was very, very odd. You could just tell there was a burden on him. And so he sat down and explained to me that they had had basically a cartel, that they were meeting with their competitors, 11 competitors, and they were divvying up the market and fixing the prices, basically. So it took some explaining because at that time I was not a teacher. I went back to get my teaching degree when Mark went to prison. So I was just a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids, really didn't know much about the industry and what they were doing. But when Mark really sat down and kind of explained to me what they were doing, and I asked, oh, is it legal? And he said, well, no, but everybody does it. So the typical thing teenagers say to their parents, everybody's doing it. But for me, it was like, this doesn't make sense. This is an amazing company that makes so much money, so much profit. Why would it need to do something illegal? And then he got into explaining to me that I asked him how they made this money by cutting up the market share between them and raising the prices. Who was this affecting? How are they making their money on this? And he said, well, it's just, the consumers, when they go to the grocery store, they're only paying, $4 or $5 or $6 more for what they're buying, because, if they raise the prices for Kraft, well, Kraft's going to raise their prices, which then in turn, passes it on to the consumer. So I said to him, so you're basically saying that, my mom and dad and my grandma, my sister and brother, my neighbors here in town, pretty much everybody around the world is, paying for your guys's, this cartel. And he's like, yeah, but it's only $5 or $6. Now, $5 or $6 to a man that makes, a 6-figure salary is nothing, but to someone that's on a fixed income, like my grandmother was at that time, $5 or $6 is the difference between putting something back on the shelf. And so that's really what just poked me right in the heart. I just couldn't believe that he was involved with something like this. And so I told him I was really didn't know what to do with this information. I told him I was going to go upstairs and pray for a while because I just needed God's guidance. I just felt that it was so wrong what was going on that I just needed guidance. I just didn't know what to do. And I'm sure if you've heard Mark's podcast, he will say that that was the scariest thing for him because he knew when I prayed about something that never was good for him. So he would definitely say that if he was here right now. But I prayed for a couple of hours. I just asked for God's, guidance and wisdom as to what was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to do? Anything? Just, having this knowledge that someone was stealing from my family was just devastating to me. I grew up, middle class, both my parents working in factories, everything was hard earned, and stealing from somebody was just something that was not tolerated. And to think that I had this knowledge and had to sit across from my parents at Thanksgiving or talk to my sister and hear how hard things were for them financially with groceries was really hard. So I prayed and waited and prayed some more and just waited for some kind of guidance. And I just felt about a couple hours into it, I just felt the Holy Spirit say to me, it must stop. That's all I heard. It must stop. I didn't know how I was going to do that or how we were going to do this, but it was very clear that God had chosen us to be the people to try to put a stop to this.
My gosh. You know, I'm sitting here even knowing the story, but now you saying it again on camera, it just gives me goosebumps, Ginger, because so many people and so many companies are not as pure as we would love for them to be. And we still see it, don't we? We still see
Yes,
people
yes,
compromising, just compromising. I love the takeaway that you shared just now. Never give up praying, never give up praying. So let's just start there. When did you come to the knowledge and the God's guidance in your life? When did that happen for you?
That would have been my late 20s, early 30s. Gone through just a difficult ordeal with my mother. She was very sick and was in intensive care for about 8-9 months. And sitting there next to her and kind of reading the Bible. I wasn't a Christian at the time, but I knew enough that that's where I needed to be spending some time. And I was blessed that some of the nurses that came in to care for my mom were Christians, and they would point out verses and places that I needed to read, and they would pray with me and pray over my mom. And so it just kind of, that's where it started. So that was before this case came about. So I'm very thankful that I had this connection with Jesus, because I don't know how we would have got through this ordeal if I'd not had any kind of faith.
Makes a difference. I know.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It does.
You know, Ginger, you had 3 children at the time, and I'm curious, at what point did the light bulb go off in your heart and in your mind that said, enough is enough? And what did you do about that?
Well, I came downstairs after, praying, and spoke with Mark and said, look, I just really feel God has told me this needs to stop. I think it needs to stop. You need to call the FBI. You need to let them know what's going on. And he was like, oh, I can't do that. So we back and forth, we went over what was going to be done. He was telling me, how connected the CEO was to Washington, D.C., and, that they would destroy us and destroy his career and destroy our family. And, I just felt, God's presence that, and he's saying it must stop. We're supposed to help stop this. And I told him, like, you can either call the FBI or I'm going to call the FBI, because they're stealing from my family at this point. And I'm sure the FBI would like to hear about it. Now, on that day, Mark could have taken a different turn. He went along with me. We contacted the FBI, but he could have easily said, Ginger, call them. You don't know anything. You don't work there. You don't have any connections there. So that told me that he really was burdened by what he was doing. He knew it was wrong, but he just didn't know how to get out of it. And so we contacted the FBI, and which was a really neat experience when you've not even had a speeding ticket. And we're assuming we'll just tell them, hey, all this is going on. You guys put your guys in there, you tape everything, bug everything. And that's how it would work. But because Mark was at such a high level, they were very clear that was not going to work. Mark was privy to the executive dining room and to the executive jets, and he was privy to everything that a regular person, that they could not insert someone normal into there. So they gave us the choice that either Mark could be arrested that day, or he could wear a wire for them. So you can imagine, as naive as we were, it was like, what? We thought you guys were going to do all the work. And they told us it would probably only take about 6 weeks for them to get enough information to make the case. And as you said in your intro, Mark worked undercover for 3 years. And that was because in the taping, everyday taping, they would talk about other crimes they were committing and other ingredients that they were fixing prices on. So it turned out to be 11 other cases that were opened up, and that's why it took the 3 years versus the 6 weeks.
I cannot even imagine, number one, going to the FBI together. Let's stop there. What were you feeling when you walked into the FBI's office?
I honestly, I felt very powerful. I felt like we had this great information to share with them about these corrupt companies that were making, close to $1 billion a year. For 11 years it had been going on. It wasn't just a current crime, it was for 11 years. So I felt honestly kind of confident, like, hey, this is the FBI, this is what they do. We're going to give them the information. They're going to get this stopped. They're going to put a stop to it. And we've done our civic duty. That's kind of how I felt going in. Never did I dream that Mark would have to wear a wire and put his life in danger. And especially and not only his life, but his mental health in danger for 3 years. It was an ordeal I would not wish on anyone to go through, because constantly the FBI was telling us, if they catch Mark with any of his taping apparatuses on, that they would kill him. They would somehow, make sure that he disappeared, or a plane would crash, or a car would explode, so every day that he left, I'm praying, Lord, just protect him and bring him home. Don't let them find out that he is wearing this wire and taping them.
Well, and as scary as that is, you kept your faith, and yet you told me that you were disappointed during those years, Ginger, that people didn't support you. I hated to hear that. Tell us a little bit about how you were feeling so alone.
Yeah. Well, during the undercover years, we couldn't share with anybody that Mark was undercover. So that was a whole different kind of loneliness. It was only Mark and I and Jesus, thank goodness, that I could place my burdens on. But once Mark was convicted and was in prison, being a woman of faith, you need people to walk alongside you. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't what I thought. I really thought my Christian brothers and sisters would do that. But even though we say we're going to walk alongside people and we're understanding and we're caring, we just didn't feel that, to the point that when we moved, we did move every place that Mark was transferred to for good behavior. I just didn't share with the church why we were moving there, why we had come there. They would ask and say, "What does your husband do?" And I would say, "Oh, he works for the government," which was true. But if you share even with your members of your church that your husband's in prison, you get a different response. And that was very disappointing to me as a kind of a youngish Christian. I was really expecting something different. So I've always said that I encourage people whenever we're speaking at a church or someplace, that I can encourage people to just step out of your comfort zone. Pray for these families. If you see them in the news or the newspaper, somebody in your church, it's very difficult on the family when someone is incarcerated. The person that's incarcerated is there, and their time is all their time. The person that's not is still having to do double duty. They're father, mother, they're the breadwinner, they're the one that takes care of everything at the home, and then still takes care of the person that's in prison by visiting them. So I wish people were more concerned and caring for those that are incarcerated, and especially the families of the incarcerated.
That's a very good, strong message for all of our audience, including me, to hear. Don't be afraid to step up and step out for someone else.
Right.
And I'm not so sure that everyone would be able to do that. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So your husband is wired. And as you said, very honestly, it not only was a corrupt company, I mean, they could have killed him.
Absolutely.
And he was threatened.
Yes.
So fast forward, when he agreed to go to the FBI, you knew that was going to cause him some suffering. Tell us what happened to your husband by stepping up and stepping out.
Well, I mean, he put his life on the line every single day. He loved the company. He loved the job he was doing, and he hated that he was taping them. He wished there would have been some other way, because it was very hard on him psychologically because that tape was running every single day, 8-10 hours a day. So if someone came in just to talk about something personal, it was on the tape. Someone talking about their mother-in-law or their child that's in trouble, it really burdened Mark in a different way, that he felt like he was harming people by the tapes rather than just honestly just catching all the crimes. So it began to take a hard toll on Mark. He when it became out that he was the informant in 1995, he attempted suicide, which was devastating to all of us. It was just he just felt that he couldn't face 8.5 years of prison. He didn't know how he was going to handle that. He just decided that he was going to take his own life. He left us a long letter, told us he was going to visit his attorney, and it turns out he was in our garage, but we weren't staying at our home. We were staying with my parents. And by God's grace, our gardener, who came every day at 8 o'clock, not 7:59 and not 8:01, 8 o'clock, felt something tug at his heart, and he came early that morning at 6:30 and found Mark and saved his life. I mean, it was God that saved it, but he was the person that was there. So, Mark risked a lot. He put a lot on the line to do the right thing. He ended up going to prison for 8.5 years and was not a Christian when he entered prison. But God moved in really wonderful ways before he left to go to prison. A gentleman stepped out and knocked on our door from an organization called Christian Businessmen Connection. It's CBMC in Chapel Hill, and told Mark, that this was going to be the best thing in his life. And he spent time with him doing a program called Operation Timothy that got Mark to really start believing that there was hope. And then in prison, Chuck Colson reached out to Mark and was like a mentor to him. And within a few months, Mark had given his life to Jesus, which was one of the greatest days, not only in his life, but in mine, because I had been praying for him for like 10 years to come to know Jesus. And, as much as you want to your loved ones and you tell them, sometimes it takes somebody different from a different approach. And Ian and Chuck were those people. So, and then Mark went on and used the time that he was in prison to mentor other men using Operation Timothy and, leading them to Christ, and others that were farther down the road in their walk. They mentored Mark. So he risked so much. And he didn't think that we would get through it. He had lots of doubt, but I kept saying, God has got us covered. He told us, this must stop. He wouldn't want us to stop it if he wasn't going to protect us. And so I felt God's protection through this whole ordeal, even though there were some really tough days. I felt the protection.
Ginger, where were you in the family versus where he was in prison? And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you mean in terms of location where we were?
Location, yes, and seeing him. How often did you see? I mean, I just can't imagine.
It's something, like I said, we'd had no one even go to jail in both of our families, so we had no concept of the prison system, let alone like just county jail system. Completely different thing. So it was a definite learning cycle here for all of us. We had prayed that if we were able to move wherever Mark was going to be located at, that we would try to move there so that we could have our boys were still middle school and high school senior to be able to see their dad every weekend. And so God was so good. He did that. We were able to move. So we lived in Chapel Hill. He was in a place not too far from us. And then with good behavior, he was transferred to a place in South Carolina, Edgefield, South Carolina. So we moved there to Aiken, South Carolina. And then with good behavior, again, he got bumped to a Navy base in Pensacola, Florida for his last 6 years. So we were very blessed to move each of those times where we could see him on Friday evening, 8 to 3 Saturday, and 8 to 3 Sunday in a visiting room. It's like an open kind of fenced in place. He was always at a low security place, kind of in a camp. Not a low security at camp. And so we did the best to make what we could with the few hours we could see each other on the weekend. You can call, but you have to pay for it. It's 300 minutes for, you have to pay for that, and everything's taped. So sometimes the boys don't want to talk to their dad about something that's going to be taped. So it was really nice to be able to, for them to come and spend time with him. face to face. So, but definitely it was a journey that I don't wish on anyone. And it's really hard on families. And we had been married 20 years. So, we had some stability where some of the other inmates that were young, and they just didn't have it. And it's really sad. It's really sad what it does to families just because of the stress, financial and mental stress that it puts on you.
Oh, I just keep taking deep breaths during this interview, Ginger. Uh,
Well, there will be
so,
somebody that listens to this that has gone through the system, that knows about the clear bags and the rolls of quarters and waiting in line to, to get in, things we had no clue about. We just didn't have any clue. And but God, always found somebody that in the line that would tell me what I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to proceed. So it's, like I said, it's nothing I wish on anybody to have to go through.
so what did you have to go through? Physically, draw the picture for us.
Well, you have to arrive a couple of hours before visiting starts, which visiting starts at 5, but people start lining up in their cars outside the facility. And so the earlier you're there, the quicker you get in to see your loved one. And then once the gate opens and you can go park your car, then you're out and you're in line again. And then you have to fill out paperwork, to say who you're visiting and their numbers. And then you have to have a little clear bag. So you can only bring in like your car keys and dollar bills and change. That's all only thing that you can bring in, like very limited for people that have babies, which is terrible, diapers and bottles and things that they need. And then you are let in, and then you just wait and hope that they call your spouse's number, and then he comes to the visiting room and you get to visit. Now on holidays, it's even crazier because everybody that maybe not gets to come every weekend, that comes for just the weekend, just the holidays, people would start lining up at 4 o'clock in the morning to be able to get in at 8 o'clock because there were just so many people traveling. And on those days, we tried not to come or come later in the day to give those families time, because we did get to see them every weekend, where some people, it was just the occasional holidays that they would get to be there. So it was a different experience. It's all vending machine. We laugh about how much money we probably spent on vending machines in 8.5 years. It was crazy. And you invent games to play because there's really, not any games. A deck of cards is missing half of it, and the games are missing pieces. But you get a lot of quality time. Like my husband got to really just talk with his kids and to talk with me about important things, or even just silly things, that there was no distractions, no TVs. He had no cell phone, no computer. So his attention was just on his kids, which was good. Because before going to prison, you would have asked him and he didn't know what grades they were in. And that's not a joke. I asked him one time and he got 1 right out of 3 as to what grades they were in.
Wow. So this sounds so simple, and I certainly don't mean it to be so, but as a Christian, we know that God's plan does eventually show itself.
No.
And Ginger, God has shown himself in so many wonderful ways. I want to talk about hope. So tell us now about the ending of this and what both of you are doing, and how you both and the family came through this, and what's going on today.
Well, there's so much now at this end of in the end of the journey, and now that the prison journey is over, and we look back and we are just in awe. As you can tell, I have this big smile because I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, what a glorious God we serve, that during the time then when Mark was in prison, we had lost everything. I mean, everything. We were down to a few months before probably I would have went and moved in with my parents. And the people that were the victims of the case, of the civil cases, won back money from ADM, and that would be like Coca-Cola and Tyson, Kraft, General Mills, I don't know, Kellogg's. So one of the people, I think it was maybe at Tyson or Mount Airy, I'm not sure, they were a Christian and said, look, this family has been through so much, Ginger brought this forward, Mark's gone to prison, we should do something to help them. And so they set up a trust fund for our kids so that at every time they won a civil case, they put a little bit of something into the kids' trust fund. And that trust fund helped me go back to school to finish my degree. It helped 2 of our kids go to college. I mean, people don't give money back. That's just, that are victims. But God knew we needed this, and he gave just what we needed to get through. And then when it got low, he'd give a little bit more. So that was one of his wonderful things. When Mark came out of prison, he was able to work for a wonderful Christian biotech company in California. The CEO is a Christian. He's just amazing man. And he helped Mark get his feet back underneath him. It's hard coming out after 8.5 years, and you have a Cornell PhD, and you've worked for these, large corporate companies, but now you are a felon. And so this gentleman just helped Mark in so many ways to just build up his confidence and get him back out there. And then, so that was a huge blessing. And then he worked for the CBMC, the Christian organization that stepped out and came to Mark at our door in Chapel Hill. He was the national director and COO for them for a number of years. And then the cherry on top of everything is that Mark now works for Coca-Cola Consolidated out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And he is the vice president of culture and care, which is like the most amazing job. It's caring for their almost 18,000 employees and make sure that they're all well taken care of. There's a chaplain in every plant. There's Bible studies and prayer groups and outreaches and community service. And this is what he gets to do for a living. He gets to care for people. He gets to share his testimony. He travels around the country telling about how wonderful Coke is and how Coke, a Christian company, a public Christian company, works, and through their program called T Factor, which is just amazing. So God is just, his plan. It's now we see if God had a plan for Mark's life and Mark decided to go his way to ADM and do what was not the right way, but when Mark just let go and said, Lord, it's yours, do what you want with me, it has been amazing. There's no other words to describe, just that we have an amazing Father that loves us and cares for us and has a plan. And now to be able to riding along this plan, it's just like, this is just unbelievable. Nothing we could have ever dreamed to have the jobs that he had coming out of prison. He earned $20 a month in prison. So we were like, whatever job you can get afterwards, we will be thrilled. Never in our wildest dreams could we have envisioned the wonderful jobs that he had laid out for Mark, and how that has just built his faith, and how Mark being able to share his faith has just been amazing.
Ginger, the words that are coming to me are just that out of the dust will come a mountain. And that seems to be exactly what's happening. Mark and you now are on the top of the mountain, but you are sharing because you're at the top and through it and being blessed. You have been given a platform to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Not only that, but audience, I want you to know, as I said also on the interview with Mark Whitacre, that there is a movie and a documentary on this, should you be interested. The movie is called The Informant, starring Matt Damon. And I think it's a fairly reasonable depiction. As Mark said, Ginger, well, it's got Hollywood a lot.
It was God's great platform. I wasn't thrilled with the movie. The documentary is extremely accurate, but God used that movie to open doors that never would have been opened before. It was the Hollywood did not want to portray anything about our faith, so the movie doesn't reflect anything like that. But because of the name of Matt Damon, it has opened doors at Harvard and MIT and Yale, where Mark can get in and speak and share about the movie, but also share the gospel. So as much as I dislike the movie, I have to say God has used it in a mighty way.
Isn't that so interesting? And the documentary, Ginger, where can people see the actual documentary?
If you go to markwhitacre.com, and then you'll see a little icon that says ID. It's in investigative discovery. It's up from the Discovery Channel. If you click on that, Then there is a small trailer, and then you can watch the hour-long interview if you'd like. It has the 3 FBI agents, Mark and I. So it's a great representation of what actually happened. The Discovery Channel is based on really because the FBI felt they were portrayed wrongly in the movie, and they were super serious men that took their job very seriously, and it came across in the movie that they were maybe a little Keystone Cop-ish, and they just didn't like that. So that's how the investigative discovery program came about.
Wow. Ginger, what an interview that you have so graciously given us. And what a book. I want to hold it up and say it to our audience. The book is called Mark Whitacre, Against All Odds. Against All Odds. So go on Amazon. I just thought this book was absolutely page-turning, inspiring, and espionage-ish and real. So, yeah, Against All Odds. I highly recommend that you read it for a lot of reasons. It just portrays what is going on today, even in our companies and with people. And so, Ginger, thank you. Thank you for being who you are.
So glad to be able to share, God's glory, that just the road that the path he's taken us through has not been easy at times, but he never left us. And like you said, we're at the mountain right now. We've had a lot of days in the valley, but he didn't leave us. And so we're so grateful to share it, and just don't want anyone to give up hope, to keep praying. Never let your faith get shattered by the terrible things in this world.
I think that's a message anyone needs to hear. Anyone needs to hear. We need more hope, and there's only one place, and it's called God, and he loves us all.
Absolutely.
Ginger, stay tuned, because I always have a ending called a Valerieism, and I think you'll appreciate this one. And it's just simply, when in doubt, don't. Oh my goodness, how many times have I'll speak for myself, because all my Valerieisms are like, they come from here, from experience. When in doubt, don't. There have been so many times, audience, when I've had that little nudge inside that says, maybe not, are you sure? And I will tell you that every time I went against that little nudge, it has not served me well. So listen to what God in his spirit is saying in your spirit. When in doubt, don't. And until next time, be blessed. Thank you for being my loyal audience. And please, if you have not subscribed by hitting that red button, I encourage you to do so. It ups the analytics, I'll just say it that way. It ups the analytics, the Google juice, and that's important to keep going. This is 6 years now, and I intend to do it for at least another 6 or 7 or 10. And always, always keep doing it right. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.